There's a famous story of Buddha being confronted by a skeptical monk who's got all these questions about the origins of life and what happens, life after death, that kind of thing. And Buddha responds by telling a story about a man who's shot by a poisoned arrow. And this man who's shot, his friends rush around him with the doctor, and they're ready to remove the arrow. But the man insists on first knowing the archer's name, his clan, his background, his motivation, details about the bow and the arrow that he was shot with, etc. And of course, the point of Buddha telling this story is that, is this man asking the right questions? So the explainability conundrum with generative AI reminds me of this story. Gen AI models are black boxes. Prompt goes in, response comes out, and it's extremely challenging to see, let alone understand, what happens in between. The transformer technology that makes large language models work involves billions of parameters operating in highly complex ways. One can try to meet this challenge head on, to understand what's happening with all of those parameters. That's what mechanistic interpretability and similar techniques are all about. The goal is to look under the hood and to try to understand the activations occurring within the LLM. But doing that today is like trying to answer the metaphysical questions posed by the man shot by the poisoned arrow. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, which leads on mechanistic interpretability research, has estimated that it will take 5 to 10 years before we are able to have a, quote, true MRI for AI. What are we to do in the meantime? How can we harness the capabilities of Gen AI and make it trustworthy today? How do we pull out the arrow? In my paper, AI Actionability Over Interpretability, I propose focusing on AI system outcomes and working backwards from mistakes. Why? When a conventional model makes a mistake, being able to interpret the model allows banks to fix it. Model interpretability directly enables improvement. With Gen AI models, this isn't necessarily the case. Understanding the parameter activations in an AI model when it makes a mistake doesn't inform the fix. With Gen AI, the link between interpretability and actionability is broken. So what can we do? Well, chain of thought can help. Most large language models now have reasoning modes where a series of logical steps, a chain of thought, is associated with the output. For instance, if you were to ask, how many D's are there in the word daddy? If you were asked that question to a non-reasoning LLM, it would simply provide an answer. If you ask it to Claude Haiku or to Llama, it returns the answer 2, which is wrong. But reasoning models show their work step by step. So for instance, for Sonnet, it notes that the word daddy is spelled D-A-D-D-Y. And then it counts the D's to an answer of 3, which is correct. With chain of thought, a user can see the step-by-step thinking associated with an output. So if the output is wrong, the user can look back and see which step was incorrect and then fix that. The potential benefits of chain of thought are so great that the top AI researchers from across the major AI labs got together and co-authored a paper on chain of thought monitorability, highlighting its promise to promote trust in AI. Chain of thought is still evolving, though. A number of studies have shown that LLMs may not, in fact, follow the chain of thought reasoning traces associated with an output. This unfaithfulness is difficult to track. In addition, the authors of the monitorability paper caution against using chain of thought as a hard control, as it could incentivize LLMs to make up reasoning that sounds good but isn't followed. So caution is called for here. Another approach, which can complement chain of thought, would be to break down a task or prompt into a series of steps, what I call chain of prompts. For instance, banks have to comply with anti-money laundering rules, including investigating suspicious transactions. Such investigations are labor and data intensive and time consuming. They're perfect for AI. But if a bank were to simply feed a transaction into an LLM and ask it, is this suspicious? How reliable would the answer be? A non-reasoning model would be a non-starter. If it can't count the letters, the number of D's in daddy, we're not going to trust it to investigate the suspicious transaction. With a reasoning model, at least there could be a chain of thought trace, a series of logical steps associated with the final output. But such reasoning takes place entirely inside the model during inference. We can't control that. What we can control are prompts. So the chain of prompts approach breaks the problem down into a series of micro prompts, effectively providing scaffolding for the work that the AI model does. In the paper, I provide a 10-step chain of prompt example regarding AML investigations. Like chain of thought, chain of prompt isn't a magic bullet. There are limits and risks associated with it, but the general idea of providing scaffolding for the prompts so that there can be clear tracing when mistakes are made is the crux of actionability. And that's what this paper is about. Instead of trying to see into AI models and understanding the cosmos, we propose focusing first on taking the arrow out and enabling users to make fixes when things go wrong. There's more detail in the paper. I'd love to hear your feedback, critiques, and suggestions. You can reach me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Come on. Let me hear you say, hey. Yeah. As he rocks like this.